I'm Michael Peters, sports editor of the Tulsa World, alongside world columnist Dave Sittler, here for another edition of Sports Extra on Demand. Huge week, Oklahoma, big upset with Texas Tech. So here's the question of the day. Overrated or aberration? What do you think about Oklahoma?
Overrated. Overrated. The defense definitely overrated. Tried to get Coach Stoops to admit that the other day. He's the one that said before the year it's time to win a championship. Now they're on suicide watch.
Well, and now I see they're circling the wagons. I think it's really, the kind of the media stuff, some of the deflection. We won't let players talk here. I mean, that's kind of penny ante psychology. It seems like this week is a huge telling point to me because Kansas State. I mean, if that's a game, I think that's very winnable. But then if you go back and look at the schedule now, if you think they're overrated, Florida State, not a good win necessarily. Texas might be their best opponent. So it seems like it's kind of a rough climb now for Oklahoma State with Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Baylor still left on the schedule, A&M still left on the schedule. Do you see over-under on wins rest of the year?
The whole thing depends, I think, Michael, on this weekend in Manhattan. They win this weekend, get things straightened out, but I think there's a real chance they lose. If they lose this, I think things will go south.
I think that's a tremendous aspect for that, and it could be really close back and forth. And I don't understand some of the like I say, kind of the circling of the wagons a little bit. I know. What do you make anything of the press conference about moving? The talk of after a week of a loss, we're going to move the press conference from Monday to Tuesday. Tuesday to Monday next week. Does that make any sense?
Well, it's the timing of it's ridiculous because I've argued with Coach Stoops about this before. He's wanted to move it to Monday before, and I've always won that argument, the only argument I've ever won with the man. And so I think his people let him down by even letting him do that. And he's following Steve Spurrier. That's his idol. What does Steve Spurrier do when he kicks his quarterback off the team? He blames it on a columnist. Won't talk to the columnist.
That's exactly right. So it's always deflection by deflection.
That's exactly
so
right.
Now Oklahoma State in the catbird seat there at number 3 in the BCS. They have a chance to run the table, play for a national championship. Kind of coming out a little bit. Mike Gundy might spin that for a new contract. Would you give Mike Gundy more money if he asked for it?
I would give him more years. I think that's what Mike Gundy wants. He wants more years on the contract because there's a basketball coach over there now that hasn't done anything close to him, has a longer contract. So, I'd give him the years, and I'd do it right now. I was talking to Boone Pickens in the press box at Missouri. I said, what's this with a contract? And he said, well, don't you usually wait till after the season to give someone a contract? And I said, no, not when he's doing that good.
Well, that is, but now here's what I say. There's still a lot of season left, and if he loses 2 games on the rest of the way and Bob Stoops beats him again, there are going to be many fans from Oklahoma State who want to give him that much more money? I mean, you got to get to a BCS game at least once before you start maybe discussing it, maybe, right?
Michael, I've covered OSU football a lot longer than you've been around here, and I've seen what that school's gone through. He has done an amazing job, and he's got that OU yoke around his neck, and now he's even got his own former players that play with him, like Thurman Thomas, saying, you got to beat OU. Gee, thanks a lot, Thurman. But I think this is lining up as a magical year for them. They got through that road. I didn't think they'd get through it. They got through that. And right now, I mean, you got to say going to Lubbock will be tough after what they did to OU, but this is a Cinderella story, and they will maybe what I don't like about it is they're acting like, well, anybody can do this job. No, they can't.
Right, well,
no, they can't. And it took him. He's grown into the job, and I admire him for that.
Can they win out? Now, do they still have a defense enough that can win out? I mean, I know they're turning people over, but still, I mean, the defense, it's soft, whatever you want to say about it. I mean, they do turn people over, but they do struggle a little bit on that side of the ball if somebody's not going to give it back to them.
If they can't beat LSU or Alabama in the BCS, no, they can't do that. But I think because of the turnover factor, it's more of a trend now. I just thought it was something that they were falling back on, but it's really something they do well. And so I think they can get to the title game. I really do.
We go back to realignment again, too, a little bit this week. West Virginia and Louisville, it's sort of like a death match. They're going to drop the cage in the middle of the country and let them wrestle it out for who's going to be the next member of the Big 12. It seemed like they had a deal with West Virginia, and now Louisville seems to be climbing back. It seems like maybe another black eye for the conference. It doesn't seem like a good way to do business. Where would you rather be, West Virginia or Louisville?
Well, here's this. We have 2 schools fighting to get into the Big 12. Who would have thought that? Everybody wants to leave.
Trying to fight to get out.
Personally, I wish they'd take them both, find a way to keep Missouri. If not, bring in BYU or Cincinnati. You got 12. That's the number you're supposed to have. DeLoss Dodds, he wants 10. But
We've always been in agreement. I think 12, as long as there's a championship game, 12 is the magic number.
yeah, you have to. I think you really have to have that. And I understand it's really sad that politics once again gets involved, just like Ann Richards did when the Big 12 was formed. Now we got Mitch McConnell from Kentucky calling David Bourne saying, hey, wait a minute. We need to be in this league, not those guys over there. And so it'll be, hopefully, you said black eye. That's a perfect thing that's
Right.
going to look like.
Because Louisville, like say from a non-football perspective, Louisville's probably a better team. But if you tell Louisville they're coming and you don't let them come, that's a problem, and that looks bad no matter what politics factors into it.
Right, and that's exactly what they're doing with West Virginia right now. And I think they're both great additions. Some people argue with me on that. You're never going to replace Nebraska football-wise, but West Virginia has good history in football and basketball. By the way, Missouri, they've been to the Final Four. When were you there? And they've been in title games. So when was the last time Missouri was in a BCS bowl? I can't remember that.
They did get to number one in the country, though.
And then they
but
got
the same number of
kick.
times that Mike Gundy's been to a BCS bowl.
That's right. But they're in an easier division.
That's true. No, you're right. All right, well, that's all we have time for this week. Join us again next week for another edition of Sports Extra On Demand.